Hello and welcome back to the 12 Days of Watercolor Christmas Challenge. Can't believe how fast the challenge is going. We are nearing the very end. Thank you so much for participating. It has been such a true joy seeing all of your paintings from the challenge. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. I'm recording this one on Thanksgiving, so I am just feeling especially grateful for all of you guys. Okay, so today we are going to be painting the cutest little woodland Christmas tree. You can kind of see there are a few little creatures. They are a little fox, a squirrel, and I have a cardinal up here. So we will, I have just like little acorns that they're kind of using as garland, maybe a little mushroom, just kind of keeping it simple, but I think it'll be such a cute forest-like painting for the holidays. Let's go ahead and get started with painting our bird and then our squirrel and our fox, and then I'll go through and paint the tree and then we'll do the background. If you are just joining in for the very first time, totally wonderful. Don't worry if you feel like you are behind because you have plenty of time to catch up. You can just go ahead and scroll down to the description of this video and I'll have all the information on how you can grab your printable outlines and watch the previous videos. Okay, I'm going to start with my smaller pointed round brush, size 6. And for our cardinal, of course, a red. So here's my alizarin crimson. Just going to go ahead and get that wet. That paint color was dry on my palette, so now if I just add a little bit of water, it'll reactivate it. So definitely going to be using that color as is to make it a little bit of a brighter, candier looking candy apple red. I like to mix this cadmium-free red hue within the red, and that creates kind of like, it's more like an orangey color, but it creates that nice candy red. Okay. So I don't have a ton of water on my brush. I do have a good amount of paint. I'm going to start by just, I know this bird is really tiny, but I'm going to use very little pressure just to start to fill in our bird. I'm going to start towards the belly. You really can't go wrong. We're really going to fill this all in with this red color all the way down through his feathery tail here. And so just use some thin pressure if you need to, just to create those tips to the feathers. So you can see that's super basic. Just gonna fill it in. Do the same up top here. And then we are gonna add a little bit of dimension. I'm gonna try my best just to leave a little bit of like white, just so you can really tell that they're feathering out on the edges of their wings. And same with this one. Come on down and fan out those feathers with our point of our brush. Kind of curve up. All right. And I got to do the little, I'm going to work around the beak because that is going to be just a different color, that orangey color. But I will just do like a little bit of a point to the cardinal's head. All right, there's my super basic red cardinal as of right now. We're gonna let that dry and we're gonna go back through and add more dimension into the bird so it's not looking quite so flat. All right, while that bird dries, let's get rid of all that red on our brush because we're gonna move on down to our squirrel. And I know there's a bunch of different color squirrels out in nature, so we are gonna do one that's a little more on the grayish side. I'm gonna grab my Payne's Gray, and then I'm gonna mix my burnt umber, that brown color that I have in my palette, and that's gonna give us that gray. I know that if you've been painting along with this challenge, you've created this grayish brown color plenty of times, so you should now kind of know that color combination. All right, so I have kind of a 1-to-1 ratio of those two colors. And not a ton of paint on my brush, but we are just going to paint in. I feel like I had too much paint on my brush. I'm going to start on the back side Squirrels have a really nice bright white tummy. So I'm just gonna fill in the back side all the way down to his little leg here and the outer edge of that leg. Basically just kind of like outlining him in a way. Just gonna grab a little bit more of that color. Come on up. I'm gonna add just a little more water to my brush. Just don't want the color to be too dark. And that way I can go back and add some more dimension. So we definitely want to color in the arm and this little arm here. So again, I'm leaving the center. I want his belly to be white. Okay, so now for the tail, I'm just gonna add a little bit of brown, more brown to that gray mixture we just mixed up. And go ahead and start to add in that tail, making sure to fan out with just real thin pressure, kind of like we did with the wings, because he's got a nice fluffy tail. All right, again, super basic. We will come back and just add those finer details to him, the most that we possibly can with something so tiny like this. We'll let that dry. Let's go on down to our cute fox, which definitely is more on the orangey brown. So here I have my burnt umber, just like that traditional medium brown. But then to warm it up, I'm just gonna add some of our burnt sienna color. It's gonna give us more of that orange coat. Okay. So I have a medium amount of paint on my brush. Start up by his ears. Again, using this smaller pointed round brush, I'm able to get a nice kind of point to the paintbrush. And no worries if you end up filling in those ears. That's no big deal. We definitely can go back and just darken the inner part of the ears. Same thing for like the eyes. If you end up painting over those eyes, no big deal. We can go back and just use a black color. So I'm gonna be really careful when I'm coming around his nose here. I am gonna try and leave that nose white the best I can. Just bring some of that color right down and underneath. And now grabbing more, we'll just add that color down, and I am gonna leave the chest area kind of whiter. So bringing that warm orangey brown color down his body, down his legs, and again, trying to leave just a little bit of his chest area white. You really can paint all the way to the edge of his arm, down to the paw, because that'll be a nice dark color. All right, fill in both those legs. We'll add dimension as this dries. And then his tail again is going to be that same orange color. We can add that dark accent once this dries. All right, so again, looking pretty basic with our shapes here for our animals, but we'll go back through and add dimension to that. So let's go back to our bird. Get rid of all that brown on my brush. Okay, so now I'm just going to add just a little bit of shadowing into the bird. So I'm going to grab my alizarin crimson and maybe just the slightest amount of Payne's gray, just to make a little bit of a richer, darker, not quite burgundy, but darker red color. Okay, so now I can just run a little bit of a line kind of down and around the base of the bird's chest there. And I'm just gonna get rid of some of that paint on my brush by dabbing my paper towel. And then we can add just a little more of that dimension into that bird's kind of like back wing on this side. And then I'm gonna add some of that darker color down into the tail feathers. We're just gonna leave the tummy still nice and bright. I'll grab some of that color again. I'm gonna run it right down the back side of the bird. And then I'm going to just help fan it out. All right. I'll get rid of all of that. Definitely feel free to switch brushes if you feel like you can't quite get the detail well enough to something smaller. Here's like a 000 fine liner brush. I'm gonna grab the orange color that I have in my palette here, so any orange. If you don't have an orange, of course, mix your red and your yellow. And then we're just going to simply paint in that beak. You probably can't even very well tell that, but there is the beak. All right. Now for the accents of those black accents within a cardinal that has kind of around their beak area and the eye area. So here I have an actual black, it's an ivory black right here in my palette. So I am going to use it. I rarely use it, but for this, it'll be perfect. So I'm going to be really careful not to run it right into the beak area that I just painted. Something to just be able to tell it's a cardinal. All right. This is a great color if you wanted to just add in a few things down below in some of the areas of the bird's wing. So I'm just going to add a little bit of texture like that. And same with this side, just really thin little lines. All right. That's all I'm going to do for that bird. Come on down to our little squirrel here. All we need to do is just grab, if you still have some of that grayish color mixed up, we just want to grab some of that. And this, because now that this layer has dried, is going to help us accentuate by just running a little bit over the back side there, that little line. Kind of run some right underneath his arms. Some kind of down and around the leg area. Just see how that's just helping to just kind of give it a little more depth. Okay, I did one right around his mouth, underneath the chin, and we'll just add some into that area. And if you would like, you can get rid of the paint on your brush and just use kind of your damp brush to help smooth in so those lines aren't quite so stark. And it's also a nice way to just bring some of that color into the belly, so maybe it's not quite so white. Kind of gives it a nice little shadow. I will use that same color just to help give a little more texture into the squirrel's tail. So I used really thin lines with my brush. Just painted that gray hairs right on top of that brown. And now we need to add our tiny little eye. So I will switch to my smaller brush. I'm going to grab that black color I have. Just going to do the very best to just add, I'll grab a little more, a little bit of an eye right there. All right. A little squirrel. And now back to our fox. I'm going to use that same grayish color that I mixed up for our squirrel. So just to remember, that is that brown mixed with our Payne's gray. And that's going to be a really nice way to shadow some of these areas. So I did one underneath the arm, do some on this arm. I'm going to run it right along that leg. Kind of run it right down and along that tail. This is a good color to use on the inside of the ears. And barely any on my brush, so go ahead and get rid of some if you need to. And just gonna fill in that chest area because it is lighter, but it doesn't need to be a bright white. Okay. Looking good. And now let's just add in some of our darker black details for our little fox, which would be on his paws. So I'm just gonna add that nice dark mitten-like paw right there. And let's see, I know I need to add it into his face with his nose and his eyes. Might just add a little bit into the tip of his tail. Okay, I'm going to switch back to my tiny brush here. Grabbing more of that black. All right, so really tiny eyes, just going to do the best we can. It's okay if you don't, mine look a little bit funny, but it's just the essence of this cute little illustrated fox helping to decorate a little tree. We're going to do his little nose here, like that. Okay, I think he looks cute. If you have any of that black color left over on this tiny brush, kind of running it right underneath where the chin is, maybe a little bit darker within the ears. I think that would help. Mine didn't get quite dark enough. Okay. Let's go ahead and move into the tree. So there is kind of a you know, you could use a bigger brush, you could use this smaller pointed round brush. It's kind of just depends on how good of a point you have on your brush. Here's my larger, size 10. So I'm gonna just go with this larger size brush. Here I have my sap green. Definitely will use this as like highlighted areas within our tree, but then I also want to darken areas, which will be with mixing this and the Payne's gray together. So first, let's go through and just add this sap green. I'll dab my paper towel just so I don't have like too much. And we need to work around our cute little garland. We could have painted that next. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to start kind of, I guess, in the middle of the tree here. And we're going to work in just doing fun little shapes. So there's a shape of a branch. We'll bring some, I'm going to do kind of like some little thick, thin, little branchy, like brush strokes, I guess you could say. Okay, there's another one. And just going to pick up a little bit more of that green. I'm not going to go too far into the tree, or, you know, I'm going to stop here pretty soon because I'm going to go back, and while that's green is still wet, I'm going to add in that darker Payne's gray, just so I can get that dimension that the tree is going to need. So again, working around our acorns like this. All right. And around our little creatures. So I'm going to stop right there. This is what I have. And we are going to now add in some Payne's gray into our green mixture to get us that nice deep dark green color. So I'm using definitely more Payne's gray than I am green. We're going to grab sections. So we're just imagining how this tree is having some shadows. So let's say some branches are up top here, are overlapping some of the ones, you know, underneath. So you can kind of see how that creates depth within the tree. That is going to be how we continue. Let's grab our sap green again, and I think I'll work my way up this time. The more water, less paint I use will create that lighter green, which is also really great for putting in dimension. Some of the branches then can be lighter just simply by adding more water. So I'm just using some thick, some thin strokes like that. Grab a little bit more. Just working this next section before we get too far, and we'll add in our darker dimension again. All right, working around our acorns. Cute little garland. It's very delicate and small. Okay, so there's that. Let's grab some of our dark color of our Payne's gray and our green. Let's just add it in. So I'm going to put it up here, kind of close to where the garland is laying in, like that. And let's add it down here. Just want to add it just a couple places like that. Kind of see how that's creating that nice contrast of that light to dark color. All right. As we work our way up, the branches get shorter and they'll just naturally get a little bit lighter as we get towards the top of the tree. I won't have quite as much of that Payne's gray. So here I have my sap green again. Continuing on up. And the branches are going to kind of angle up, as you can kind of see what I'm doing here. It's kind of swooping up. All right, we're getting to the top, leaving little bits of white here and there in between our strokes. All right. I think I like the way that top came together. I might just add a little bit kind of closer to the bird, like that. All right, looks good. Let's just add a little bit of that Payne's gray color into more like the center, where it's going to be the darkest, most, shadow dense area, which is down the center. I'm just going to drop that in. Like that. Looking very, very pretty. Okay, continuing on down, grabbing our sap green and adding that to these branches. So again, some of these branches need to be lighter, some of them need to be darker. Just gives that nice, easy depth that you can create with watercolor with the light and the dark contrast. Okay, here's our little fox standing in front of our tree here. Continuing on with our sap green, working around our little acorn garland. We certainly can maybe add some more green around that garland if we find that it looks a little funny once we start to paint it in. All right, so just kind of fanning those strokes. Remembering to use more water in areas, picking up just water, using it with the green. All right. This is have not added in any darkness to these branches yet, the ones that we're just working on. So I think I will do that right now. Let's grab our Payne's gray, mix it with our green. I'm using quite a bit of that color. And I'm definitely going to add it down underneath kind of where the squirrel is sitting on the tree. Definitely going to need some shadows there just to help ground that squirrel. And yeah, let's add a little bit more into the branches on this side of the squirrel. Okay, got a little bit of paint over the squirrel's tail. No big deal. Just use your paper towel. Sometimes I use my finger just to kind of swipe it away. All right. Seems like enough for right now. Let's just continue on down. We're almost done with the tree. Just gonna work around our little fox. So it doesn't really matter, like, you know, what specific branches you're creating, just as long as you're kind of giving it a little bit of a texture of leaving white in between your brush strokes. Just some subtle, you don't need a ton, just of that white paper showing just a little bit. All right, continuing to bring it this way. Just rotate my paper a little bit so I can get a good angle. All right. So very close. I'm going to add some darker dimension towards the bottom. Our Payne's gray here. We definitely want it underneath, kind of over here by the fox. And then let's see, definitely would like to add some on this side towards the lower half of those branches. Okay, just kind of use the tip of your brush just to fan out some of those pieces. That looks really nice. You'll notice that anything that's wet is going to appear darker than some of the areas that are already dried. So just so we know that, it's going to dry a little bit later. I'm going to grab some of that brown. Here's just that burnt umber color that I have to paint in the trunk of the tree here. And definitely going to want to add just a little bit of the brown and the Payne's gray mixture together. That I'll drop in right where the trunk meets the tree, just to help darken that part that is being shadowed. Okay, I'm going to go back with my size 6 pointed round brush and paint in those acorns. So I'm just going to use my burnt umber. Now I don't want a ton of water on my brush, just enough to make the paint glide. And I'm going to focus on just painting the lower half of these little acorns. They are so hard to see that you really can't mess up. It doesn't have to be a perfect shape. Just kind of do the best you can on the lower half. Just want to make it kind of known that these are just tiny little acorns that the woodland creatures are decorating with. And we'll go back through and do just a little basic color for the top of the acorns. This would be a really pretty painting to do larger scale, so feel free to enlarge the outline. You can use it as many times as you wish and enlarge it, and you can try this again. Okay, so for our tops, we are going to use that gray color just to really differentiate it from the bottom half of our acorn. So go through, just paint little tops. And again, we might need to add some green around these acorns if they look like they're floating too much, but I definitely want them to stand out, and that white paper is going to help them pop against kind of that green so they don't just fall flat. Great, there's that. And here we have our little mushroom that he's decorating with. So that mushroom can be combinations of our brown and our gray colors together. So I just mixed up a little bit of our grayish brown. Go ahead and paint the top piece there. And you can certainly paint the bottom piece here, but we'll have to wait for it to dry before we can add any little like dimension shadow to the to our mushroom. Okay. Looking so very cute. I love this little scene. But now we need to ground it. So I am going to create just a nice little snowy ground, and you certainly can add in kind of a foresty background. So I'm going to switch to my size 10, which is just a larger pointed round brush. And I have a couple different blues. I have a Winsor blue and a French ultramarine blue. I'm going to mix both of those together. I'm going to play with both colors of those blues. Now I want to use mostly water, a little bit of that paint. We're going to run that right over there. I'm going to grab more water, and I'm going to do my best to leave white of the paper showing in between the blue that I'm painting. All right, so here's our foreground here. Again, using mostly water, haven't even picked up more blue, and just going to add in little bits of white, or create little bits of white of the paper showing to create that snow. Grab a little more of that blue. All right, and then just use your water like that. So there's kind of that snowy base. I will add in a little bit of our darker color blue here. So here I have my Payne's gray. I don't need a lot of it. And that's going to create a really nice shadow effect for how that tree is sitting right here. And also grounding our little fox. Right. And now for the background, you certainly do not need to do a background, but I think it'd be really pretty to create some type of just really nice blurred foresty background. So for that, I'm going to use more of the darker greens that we mixed, which was our sap green and our Payne's gray. Because it's in the background, I don't want it to be as attention grabbing, and naturally it's just going to be not quite as, you know, bright. Okay, so doing fun little back and forth squiggles for our tree. I'm going to work fairly quickly. Kind of use different dimension and depths, different darknesses for our trees. You just want to make sure that you're using, you know, I don't want to take away from our foreground illustrations. It just needs to be basic. So grab some water, paint some fun back and forth motions of these lines. I might need to grab more green into my palette. I used quite a bit of it with our tree. Okay, just add a little more green. But always making sure to mix it with our Payne's gray, and it's definitely more water than paint on my brush. All right. And so the ground can kind of definitely, you know, it's gonna raise up towards the back. So you don't need to make it come all the way down to where we painted this forefront here. Just going to do another light tree in the background here. So you can see I'm just barely using any paint, mostly water right there. Show that up here. And I'm going to do that over here. Mix up my green and my blues. All right. I'm gonna paint right around that pretty cardinal. And something like that. Be good. All right, let's just kind of ground in some area back here. Just taking that light green, running it around. I'm gonna take the blue now that I've been working fairly quickly, but I wanna take this, I have a, this would be like the Windsor blue. And it's a really bright, crystally sky blue. I'm gonna use that. I'll start at the top. And come on down. And again, I'm gonna mix it into the greens of the trees that I've already painted. It's just gonna give it that nice, misty, snowy feel. All right, using a lot of water, running that blue down. We are getting so very close. Bring it down here. Again, don't be afraid to apply more color. You can always lighten it with more water. I definitely want to add in a little more of my blues down below here. Just playing with that water. Okay. Filling in some of those white areas back there with the tree. Just gonna grab a little more blue. Want to darken this area right here. Around our tree. I like the way that the white is kind of surrounding our forefront tree here. Just looks so very pretty in the background. I really like what that did for our tree here in the main focus area. And again, now if you want to add just some fun snowy texture to your painting, the Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed-Proof White is a great way to do that. I'm going to use my size 6, kind of that smaller pointed round brush. A lot of the times what I'll do is just grab enough, put it on my palette here. And I'm definitely going to use it here in the foreground just to help lighten, especially if I got it just a little darker than I was planning on doing. I'll just run that right over top there. This would be a nice effect if you wanted to add snow to your actual tree or any other types of snow in the background. Just dropping that white paint in there while it's still wet. Gonna be a really fun texture in the background. All right, you guys, here we have another painting completed in the challenge. And again, just as a reminder, if you are participating in all 12 days and submitting them as an entry to hopefully have a chance at winning a free entry into my Master Watercolor Dog Breeds course, I'm going to be doing one randomly selected winner out of anyone who completes all 12 days of the challenge. I would love to see your paintings. In order to enter, you're going to post your photo, a photo of your painting over on Instagram and tag me at Windswept Design Studio. I'm going to keep track of all your entries over there. If you don't have Instagram, do not worry. You can always send me an email. I have all the directions on how to enter in the description below in this video. All right, you guys, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I cannot wait to paint with you all tomorrow.